for career counseling for LLM students at the George Washington University Law School in DC. Just want to express my gratitude to Angela and Clara at NYU for convening this panel, and of course, our panelists. We have three distinguished panelists today. First, we have with us Xenia Wong. She's a counsel at Bennett Jones in New York. She practices Canadian corporate law in New York and represents US-based and international clients on transactions with an emphasis on cross-border mergers and acquisitions, private equity transactions, and other complex cross-border corporate matters. She holds an LLB from the University of Exeter in the UK and is licensed to practice Canadian law as a legal consultant. We also have with us Mo Syed, who's a principal attorney in Offit Kerman's Immigration Law Group. He represents clients in business and employment-related permanent and temporary visa matters, along with families and individuals and family-based immigration matters. Mo used to work at a civil and business litigator in different firms in Washington, D.C. and Nashville prior to devoting himself full-time to immigration law. He holds a JD from the George Washington University Law School and is admitted to the New York, D.C. and Virginia bars. And also with us is Charlene Yim. She's a partner at Gibson Dunn in New York City. She's a member of the International Arbitration and Litigation Practice Groups. In addition to representing clients in international arbitration proceedings, she also represents clients in major global investigations, white-collar, and civil litigation matters. She also maintains a significant pro bono practice and advise individuals and organizations on public international law and international human rights. She holds a JD from Harvard Law School and is admitted to the New York Bar. So what we will do today, we will attempt to cover the following topics: career opportunities in public and private international law, strategies to build a professional profile and landing a job in international law upon graduation, advice on finding employment in the US following completion of your program, advice on pursuing the New York Bar, and also potentially opportunities that you should consider.
ये है और एक वो आर्टिकल 370 है ऐसा भी कुछ था ना कुछ
outside of, sorry, someone is on, if you could maybe mute yourself. Thank you. So I was saying an opportunities you should maybe consider outside of the US as well. Just a quick reminder that all of our panelists are participating today in their own personal capacities. Their views, comments, and opinions that they will express are of their own and not that of their employers. This panel is being recorded, and a recording of the session will be made available by the ABA International Law section. Please maybe kindly leave your cameras on. It's nice for the panelists to see you all, but please mute your microphone. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. All right. Having said all of that, want to welcome, our panelists, and maybe we'll start with you, Xenia. It's the same question for all of you. The first one, maybe if you could tell us briefly about the type of work that you do. I did mention it at the beginning, but would appreciate you telling the students about it as well.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So as Syed mentioned, I'm based in New York. I'm a Canadian lawyer. My practice is private equity. And because I'm a Canadian lawyer in New York, as again mentioned, I'm a registered foreign consultant in New York. I'm not qualified in the state of New York. So my clients, while they are US based, we help them make acquisitions, divestitures, cross-border in Canada.
Nice. Thank you. What about you, Mo?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thank you again. So I am a corporate immigration lawyer, and my work consists of helping corporate entities, small, medium, and large, as well as nonprofit organizations, and also families in various types of U.S. Immigrant and non-immigrant visas. So interestingly, when I myself was a student at George Washington, I was a F1 student, and my own journey from F1 to H1 to then permanent resident and U.S. citizenship. I went through the whole thing from student to employee. So that's the kind of work I do. Some of it is purely U.S. domestic, where we represent companies that are primarily based in the U.S. With their staffing needs. So, law firms, IT companies, hospitals, doctors' offices, and in DC, there's a lot of nonprofit international development work, which is currently in a lot of turmoil. We do a lot of work for some, companies that are hiring temporary and permanent employees here in the U.S. And then there's a lot of work that we do for companies that are based outside and they're significant in their home jurisdictions, and we help them to enter the U.S. market and do the business entity formation and then do the work visas for their principals and their key executives. So that's just a small sort of sampling, but I'll leave it there, and I'll be happy to answer questions if there's any later on.
Thank you for this comprehensive introduction. Charlene, I think we do have Charlene with us. What about you, Charlene?
Hi, everyone. I'm a partner in the New York office, as you mentioned. I primarily practice international arbitration, so international disputes. I do both international commercial arbitration, so commercial disputes, as well as investor state arbitration. I have a kind of a nice kind of 50-50 split between the two at the moment. In terms of region and industry, we really try to cover the full gamut. So, my clients are in energy and infrastructure, pharmaceuticals, et cetera. And regionally, we cover disputes in Latin America, Asia, Africa, kind of throughout the world. So that's my billable practice. And as a key part of my practice, I also do quite a bit of public international law work in the human rights space on a pro bono basis.
Nice, thank you. And maybe we can stay with you, Charlene. If you could tell us what you like the most about your job.
Oh, what do I like the most about my job? So maybe just two things, I guess I'll just highlight. The thing that I really enjoy about my job is working with my teams and my clients. For me, I really thrive off of kind of a teamwork environment. And so that's how all of my cases are run. And we really just have exceptional lawyers that we work with every day from, the paralegals to the associates to, the senior partners. I really enjoy that kind of collaboration. International disputes in particular is something I've always been drawn to because of my love of international law and just kind of the complex nature of the kinds of disputes that we do. So that for me is what keeps me, kind of content and continuing to do the work that I do.
Nice, thank you. Syed, what about you? Any similarities or do you have other?
I think I'll answer that question in two parts. So one, a big part of my role here in New York is business development. And so I get to go out there and I do a lot of the conferences. I attend a lot of conferences. I get to do a lot of meetings and meet with international lawyers, law firms, US lawyers. And I've always liked that aspect about my job. And then the second part of that is, I would say, more related to the actual work, whereby the nature of my work means that the target is different. There's a different industry every time. And so I get to learn about different industries. And it's that sort of continuous learning process that I really enjoy.
Thank you. That's a nice answer, different than what Charlene had mentioned. Mo, what about you? Anything else you may want to add on this?
Absolutely. So I think both of what Charlene and Xenia said, I agree. I have similar interests that I find are, advanced by my job in both in the international space and then also on the business development side. Like I do really like meeting new people and new businesses that are across multiple industry lines to get to know, really smart people that are doing very exciting things and creating value. I think there's, maybe two or three parts I can answer. The one thing that I really enjoy is I've been always very interested in the like international business activity and in immigration law as a business immigration lawyer, and as well as, we do some family work for and a lot of work for um, that's spread across all different countries of the world. So it gives me a chance to have active live relationships with people across the planet. And usually, if I travel, there's, clients or, that have become friends over the years. So it's fun to visit and see the progress and prosperity that has been made possible. Also just being a international student originally myself and um, making the transition from student to employee and doing the immigration piece, it brings me a lot of satisfaction to help others that are in the same situation and both sort of helping American companies to get the top qualified talent that they need, as well as helping others from outside the U.S. who are very hardworking, dedicated, smart people coming into the U.S. Now at Offit Kerman, so I'm a shareholder, principal partner in the DC office, and so we have a group of close to 300 lawyers that are uh, across multiple expertise areas in multiple, where we have offices all across the East Coast and then also in California. So part of that role allows me to be like an outside general counsel. So I do have clients that come to me for non-immigration work, and I help manage teams of attorneys in litigation and corporate transactions, and other matters where I get to manage the client relationship, but then there are other experts in my firm and sometimes outside the firm. Sometimes you've got to really, refer the client to the best lawyer for the job, and they may or may not be inside my firm. So that's also fun to be able to like, I mean, immigration law itself is fascinating. It's changing, evolving, so it stays challenging. I enjoy that work, being an advocate for my client, trying to help them win difficult cases. But then also this opportunity to interact with my other non-immigration law colleagues within the firm and kind of, knowing business and individual legal issues enough to talk intelligently with clients. So it's fun and exciting.
Thank you, Mo. So today's focus,
Yeah.
obviously, of the panel is on careers, and maybe we'll stay with you, given that you transitioned, as you mentioned earlier, from a student to an employee. You were once an F1 student, and many of our students
Yeah.
here today attending today's panel probably also
Yeah.
on F1 student visas. How did you obtain your first job, and what role did networking play in that?
Absolutely. You'll have to keep me on track on time because I there's a lot I can speak to. Uh,
Sure.
so my first job, so the job that I started as an associate, like after I finished my JD, right? So I finished my JD in 2000, and so in my second year, my first year law school summer, I did a job with the DC. It used to be called the um, Office of Corporation Counsel. It's now called the Office of Attorney General in DC. So it was a summer program in litigation. So that was the first summer. Being a non-US citizen, I wasn't really eligible for employment with the government. So then my second year summer, I was looking for a private law firm practice that would eventually um, be able to sponsor me for the immigration side. And so it was near the start of the summer, and my grades were good, but I wasn't like in the top 10%. So a lot of the big law firm, like the regular associate, summer associate programs, I didn't really have much luck. And it was close to the start of the summer, and I didn't have a job. And then I got a call from one of my buddies who was with me in the JD program. He was 1 year ahead of me. And we were both together when I started as a 1L. He was the president of the International Law Society at GW, and I was, benefited that I got active in that organization, and I became friends with my friend. And so he called me and he said, "Hey, the firm that I am working with are looking for a law clerk for the summer because I'm leaving, and if you want, I can introduce you to them." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I had to be a little open-minded. It was not my primary area of professional interest. Like the job was in civil litigation, in trial work, in the tort space, so product liability. Uh, and it was not necessarily an area that was like my first preference. But I was like, hey, I went and met the firm, and they like me, I like them. And it was purely networking that helped me because they literally didn't look at my transcripts. They just said, hey, you got referred by your friend and we like him, so you must be a good guy. And so, hey, you want the job, you got it. And so I started the summer with them. And then, I mean, uh, I think the key for me was eventually to figure out that um, the technical expertise, no matter where you go, you've got to work hard. You've got to create a reputation of being responsible and um, accountable. Like when you get assignments, you have to make sure that you're, understanding what the supervisor is wanting and go out the extra mile and do a really good job and knock it out of the ballpark. And that's what I try to do. Like, and I think I was successful. I was invited back. They made an offer for an associate position upon graduation. And the lessons learned were like basically that, it's two things that are key. Like, for sure, an interest in the subject matter of what you're doing. Plus, I mean, the people make a big difference. So my advice is, and so even though I stayed in that job for several years, and eventually I decided to move out of litigation and into immigration. But the role models I had, the senior attorneys, the associates, the paralegals, the secretaries, all of the people in the office who were solid professionals, they all, I try to stay friends with them even till today. My first boss is still a mentor and a friend, even though we work in very different lines. But it's important to get a sense of like, hey, what kind of people do you want to surround yourself with, and find quality people that will help advance professionally and personally. So for me, I think the networking part, but then also being good at what you do. Like I mean, yes, you want people to like you, but you also want people to know that you can do a really good job. So I'll end there.
Thank you, Mo. What about you, Charlene? I know you used to work at Freshfields before Gibson. How did you find these two opportunities, and did networking play a role in either one?
Sure. I mean, so I took quite a traditional route to my summer associate and then kind of 1L or first year position. I did the usual kind of on-campus recruiting, interviewed at only really a handful of law firms because I think maybe a lesson learned from me is really just I wasn't really sold on the idea of being in private practice. I wasn't really sold on the idea of being at a law firm. And so I just said, look, I'll participate because I'm kind of curious to know what this is like. And I interviewed at just a handful of firms, and I ended up just really enjoying my conversations with the different law firms that I was thinking about, and ultimately with Freshfields in particular. And so what that really taught me, I mean, if you told me back then, when I was interviewing that I'd still be at a law firm even today, I would have told you you were totally insane. That is just not something that was even in the realm of possibility when I was thinking about summer associate roles. But really, I was just open to the idea. I really was enjoying my conversations. I was kind of surprised at how interested I was throughout the process. And so, for me, it's always been, and this is something Mo had mentioned as well, is just being open to the opportunities that are available to you, even if it's not exactly consistent with maybe what you had originally thought you wanted to do and had planned for yourself. And so I ended up going to Freshfields for a few years, really enjoyed my time there. And then again, kind of keeping in with the theme of being open to opportunities, I worked very closely with a senior associate at Freshfields at the time. He ended up moving to Gibson Dunn. I wasn't thinking about moving at all. That was not really, again, in the realm of my thinking. I was perfectly content where I was. But he presented again another opportunity for me to come join Gibson Dunn. That opportunity really presented itself again by just being open to the idea, working really hard, as Mo said, in terms of the work that I had been doing with this particular attorney. Just showing and proving myself to be someone that they would want to have, at kind of their new shop. And so, yeah, that's how I've ended up here, and how I've ended up here and doing, this work at a law firm for as long as I have, completely, not within the plans that I had for myself in law school, but again, kind of very, very content. And so I would strongly recommend that as you're thinking about what your career looks like, just being open to the idea and taking a chance, because you really just don't know kind of how much, it just opens so many doors and so many exciting opportunities to build networks and relationships.
Thank you for sharing that. What other path were you considering other than law firm? I know you mentioned that was not really something you had thought about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes into what I was saying about my pro bono practice, which is,
I
I went
see.
to law school very much, thinking that I wanted to work in the international human rights space. And, no one kind of tells you how hard it is to get a job in that area and how few and far between those opportunities are if you have specific requirements as to where you'd like to be and kind of what kinds of issues you want to work on. And so, again, for me, at the end of the day, I was not thinking about law firms at the time. I was very much thinking that, going to The Hague or, working at the UN was something that I was more focused on at the time. But because I really enjoyed my summer associate program, because I really enjoyed the work I was doing, I started slowly kind of pivoting into the work that I'm doing now. And I've really kind of gotten a lot of contentment from that. And what I've really loved is being able to do some of that, what I had been passionate about in law school, at a private law firm, but on a pro bono basis with all of the resources and the support that the firm gives me to do that work. So I still get to do a lot of that, which is great. But that was, yeah, my, back when I started law school, again, working at a law firm was as far away from my mind as it possibly could be. So.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Xenia, what about you? I mean, you went to law school in the UK. You're licensed in Canada. You're non-barred in New York. You're working here as a special consultant, on Canadian matters.
Mhm.
So it's very unique. Can you tell us how you got your position in New York, and did networking play a role in that?
Sure. So I guess going a step back, in contrast to Charlene, my path has been completely atraditional in the sense that I did go to school in the UK and I actually started my career in Hong Kong. So I'm actually called in Hong Kong as well. And, I started with Linklaters at the very beginning. And then I had actually moved firms as a result of the financial crisis back in '08. And so again, I go to both panelists' point about being open. At one point, I'd become a projects lawyer, which was not what I started in. I had actually intended to become a capital markets lawyer. And specifically because the market in Asia allowed me to be an equity capital markets lawyer. And then in terms of transitioning firms, like it's always been networking. It's always been networking, save for, I think, one move. And I've moved through probably 3 or 4 firms at this point. Because from Hong Kong, I wanted to move to Singapore, where I also worked as a registered foreign lawyer. And then, my last stop in Singapore was at Allen and Overy for a couple of years and as a registered foreign lawyer. And again, that role too, and was found through networking. So, it's always critical to stay in touch, be open-minded, again, as to Mo's point about maybe not necessarily being, a role that you had thought of. It's always good to go meet the people. And, I completely agree with, you need to like the people that you work with, be in the environment that you work with. I remember asking myself, the question was always for me, at 3 a.m. in the morning or 2 a.m., hopefully not 3 a.m. Do I still like these people that I'm working with? Is it someone I can work with? Are we a good team together to get this deal over the line or whatever we're working done? So it's always been networking. I would say the one time that I probably didn't use as much networking was actually my transition back to Canada, when I had to be called and I took the bar again. And I think that was just a function of me not having been in Canada for so long, but otherwise, always networking. It's always about your networks and who you meet and staying in touch. And I think that's critical, particularly as you get more senior in this industry.
Thank you. And maybe can you, students always hear that they do need to network. Can you maybe break it down to us briefly as to what that maybe entailed for you? And I just want to acknowledge the questions in the chat. I will go over them once we go through some additional questions here.
Mm-hmm. So for me, it was both, I guess, external firm events where you would just, meet attendees and also in-firm networking. So when I was more junior, I had mentors, partners who would mentor me, and they would both advise me, make introductions, just as part of, being in the industry and at meetings. My own friends, because everyone kind of starts off, well, for the most part, they start off at a law firm and then, they move on to other places and you grow your networks that way. And in a way, it's very organic. You can be more intentional about it, but every time there's an opportunity to meet new people, I would say take it and do it. You never know what can happen. It may not be immediate, but 1, 2 years down the road, that could turn into something, into a role, that you may be interested in.
Thank you. Yeah, keeping an open mind and planting seeds, you just never know when they will, I guess, blossom later on. So I know you've all mentioned that you very much enjoy the work that you're doing. I'm just curious if there are any, quote, disadvantages of a job in your field. Maybe we'll say with you, Senyo.
I mean, I don't know. It's as it's a disadvantage as much as it is just kind of a function of the job. I mean, I think it's both like the pro and con of being a transactional lawyer is really flexibility, right? And it's feast or famine. And so when you're kind of in a famine time, you have flexibility to kind of do other things, whether it's pro bono or other types of work. But, when it's a feast time and you're very busy, like your time sometimes feels like it's not your own. But, there are trade-offs. And as a transactional lawyer, you do kind of take it as it comes. But I would say of everything, that's probably what I would call a quote unquote negative if I had to pick one. But, I it's part of the job for me.
Yeah. Charlene?
This is going to sound like incredibly unsophisticated, but honestly, the biggest disadvantage of my job is because it's international and my clients are all over opposing counsel. My teams, like I work with, our Dubai office or London office, Singapore, the time zones that you have to take calls, like no one tells you this, but especially in this world of kind of virtual meetings, you end up just taking calls at, every hour of the day. So I have to say that is honestly, for me, the disadvantage that I think about the most because it's a daily occurrence that that you have to adapt yourself to that. No one really warns you about that when you think about a truly international practice. But that for me is the only real disadvantage I can think of. Otherwise, I love the fact that I get to do this kind of international work.
Thank you. Mo?
So, yeah, sorry, I got a little distracted there. I think we were talking about, could you just
Oh, I could
restate the
restate its
question?
question. Yes,
Yeah,
yes. I just mentioned
yeah.
that all of you really very much enjoy the work that you're doing, obviously, and if there are any quote disadvantages to to a job in your field. Um, I know for immigration lawyers, you deal with a lot of
Yeah.
different personalities and people just feeling their whole lives just depend on the work that you're doing. So at least that's what I've heard from other immigration lawyers. I don't know if that has been your practice and if you consider that to be a disadvantage or not.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think that, I think there's a few different ways to look at it. I mean, like in terms of longevity and job security, the like people say, oh, okay, transactional work versus litigation work, and like, oh, there's always going to be litigation, and like sometimes when the economy's down, then maybe transactions is not such a big deal, and so some people think about it in that sense. In terms of immigration law, I mean, for me personally, um, like my journey from first like a litigation law firm in DC, and then and then switching so that from plaintiff's work to doing management side work. And then I moved to another law firm and did litigation, but this time from the management side. And so the journey then to then immigration law, I like basically after a few years of different areas, I started my own law firm, and that's when I found immigration. And so for me personally, I'm very the area of law is very interesting and exciting. So I really enjoy what I do, and I feel that that makes me go the extra mile for my clients because I find the subject matter interesting. Um, I mean, there is, I mean, you know, mm, in times like these, especially right now, like with the new administration, there's a lot of change going on. There's a lot of anxiety, and there's a lot of so the when you become emotionally invested with your clients, there's a lot. I mean, the last 6 to 8 weeks, I've been on calls like Charlene was saying in different time zones, and the clients are nervous, and you're oftentimes uh, there's a lot of stress and anxiety that goes with worrying about your client problems that you can't necessarily bill all your time for. A lot of the work that we do in the immigration space is fixed fee work, and we do also a lot of billable hour work, but at times I feel like it takes a toll, like when you're so invested emotionally with your client. So sometimes separating the work life and separating, it's like, okay, hey, I've done the best I can, and I need to stop worrying about this. That can sometimes be a challenge. Um, but it's I think a good thing really, because I think if we are lucky enough to find something that we enjoy doing, and there's a plenty of this work. Immigration has been a growing field since I started. I feel that I think one other thing I would add is that it also look at um, the colleagues, like the bar. So the immigration bar, I'd really like it. It's and like the ABA international section has a active immigration law committee and several other committees. So, you meet people that are like-minded, and in immigration, we're always kind of our opponent is always the U.S. government, and so we're always very collegial with each other. Like it's not like we're not typically. I'm not going to have a conflict with another immigration attorney that's in the private practice. So that's a positive thing about the immigration bar.
Mm, thank you. That was great advice about trying not to be maybe too emotionally invested with maybe with clients when it comes to immigration law. I'm going to go through some of the questions in the chat. There's a theme here about JD versus LLM students. So I'll go over two or three of these questions. There was one question about how to navigate JD versus LLM mindset in U.S. law firm. Another one about, do law firms prefer JD over international LLMs? Are there opportunities for international LLMs, either in OPT or hiring? And the last one is somewhat similar about LLMs, if there's an option for them to do a summer internship. Maybe I'll start with you, Charlene. I know you are on the hiring committee at Gibson Dunn. I'm just curious, as to what the hiring committee may typically look for if they're interviewing maybe LLMs and this whole path of JD versus LLM, maybe in a big law such as Gibson Dunn.
Sure. I mean, every law firm is different. Of course, when it comes to kind of how they treat, how they go about hiring LLM students versus JD students, I think, maybe if I was trying to kind of think about generally how this goes about, obviously the JDs have a very kind of clear path. You do the on-campus interviewing, and then you do the summer associate stint, and then it continues from there. The way that I see law firms in New York, at least, hiring LLM students is typically through the job fairs or kind of open calls for LLM students when if a particular group needs it. And I think you will know better than I even that many law firms are hiring LLM students for particular practice groups very frequently, or particular skill sets that they're looking for, and will participate in these job fairs with that in mind. As kind of our team does as well. That's all to say that there are like less traditional ways of kind of getting to these types of opportunities with New York firms. I mean, sometimes, they might, a firm might not participate in the job fair, but a need arises where they need a particular language skill set or someone who has a particular kind of set of experiences. And so I do always think it's kind of worth, having your ear to the ground and being, kind of vigilant in terms of what the law firms are putting out there in terms of their needs, even if it's not the formal job fairs. I think it's worth the networking element that we had discussed becomes critical at this kind of moment, because you want to be at kind of the top of mind if and when an opportunity arises that, you might be perfectly suited for. So, developing a network and just kind of knowing people and checking in is another way that I've seen kind of people get hired through the less maybe less traditional means. But yeah, most law firms, I mean, especially in New York, I think, they're realizing what an incredibly talented pool of lawyers in the LLM programs, what that pool offers and how much kind of depth that it adds to their teams. So I think you see a kind of a combination of law firms in New York, at least getting more kind of clued in through the formal job fair process, as well as through these kind of more informal or like less traditional kind of paths as well.
Thank you. That was very insightful. Xenia, would you like to add anything else to what Charlene had just mentioned?
I mean, I wouldn't, my experience is not with a US law firm necessarily in New York. Like, we're, again, a Canadian law firm, but again, I think it comes down to just networking. There are non-traditional paths. You aren't necessarily kind of going through the JD process. But, again, keep an open mind, keep networking, keep meeting people. I mean, from what I've seen within, and among lawyers and law firms, like, people are very happy to recommend others if they find that, they meet someone that's a better fit for a role, or, there's a firm that's looking specifically. So again, just keep an open mind and keep networking hard.
Okay. Thank you. Most same question, but also there's a question in the chat about suggestions for LLM interested in practicing immigration law.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that we need to always, I think, look at the glass half full, right? So folks who, and sort of applying that to the LLM group is that, you know, realize the strengths of your academic training, your professional experience, focus on industry and regional experience. Like I try to, every time I'm advising or helping guide an LLM student with the job search, I always tell them that, and especially in immigration, because the language ability, the experience in a foreign work and business, culture, language expertise, expertise with, knowing a particular region. And I think in my case, for example, I did a JD. However, I had 18 years of experience growing up in another country and knowledge of, professional and educational settings in other countries. So in immigration, that's very key. Like once you have that ability, that's a very strong role that you can play as a US based lawyer to help your clients, because I think a lot of the reasons why my clients like me, especially the foreign nationals or the foreign, whether it's the employee or the owner of the business, they have a sense that, hey, this guy's kind of gone through the same transition, or they've made, this guy's kind of a good resource because he can relate to us and also has some, American style expertise. So I think for immigration, those are things that I would definitely highlight, like that the LLMs would come in with a strong advantage. And again, I think, you know, I a hiring person is going to be, yes, fine, there can be certain maybe stereotypes or generalizations about like JD versus LLM, and depending on what area of law a lawyer is practicing in. Like, there's some US law practices that are very, very domestic, right? Like, so if you're practicing criminal law in a county in the part of the US that's like, very traditional, then you may not even, have met a lot of LLMs in your life, right? So it's, on the other hand, um, being in one of, it just really depends on the area of law and the industry that you're focusing in. And I try to encourage folks to really highlight the the specific skills, abilities, problem solving techniques, or communication, organization, project management, like highlight all of those skills. And also don't assume that you have to really, I think, work with somebody that can help you to craft the resume in a way that is easily digestible to, like, so you may have done um, a project for like the biggest company in your home country, but don't assume that that company name is known to an American recruiter, right? They may, so you have to connect the dots. You have to, so a lot of times people will list out areas of law, like specific regulations and things that are very relevant in their home countries, but they don't really translate over to an American style. So I think it's important because the reviewer will value your experience, because I think most of us that are in senior, like a management position, we want people that can come in and move the ball forward. And we won't care that much about whether you have an LLM or a JD. I mean, maybe certain specific types of law need like a knowledge of civil procedure code if they're litigating. But I think I would look at more like, okay, if I'm assessing a candidate, like how much energy do they have? How street smart are they? Can they be given a task and, communicate clearly and write well and verbally communicate well? And so there's ways to take education and work experience and highlight it in a way that's highly relevant and persuasive.
Mhm. Thank you. That was very helpful. Charlene, a question for you. I know you have to head out in 5 minutes, so this will be the last two questions for you. We have in the chat a question about any suggestions for LLM students interested in international arbitration law. And then the second question is, it's really two questions, but it relates to, so a lot of students will be graduating in 3 months, and all of you have mentioned networking and maybe identifying your areas of expertise, where your strength is. Any other advice that you may have for students to what to prioritize on in their job search for the next 3 months, and whether they may want to also broaden their search outside of the United States, potentially into other markets?
Sure. So I can take that. Let me just take the first question first in terms of advice for someone who's interested in international arbitration. I mean, as
Sure.
Mo was saying, I think what's nice about international arbitration in particular is that, by its very nature, we are looking for people with a variety of experiences. There's no kind of expectation that you have something like particularly, I think, domestic in terms of experience, which is great. So as an LLM student, I think, it's for many, it's a very kind of a natural kind of inclination to explore international arbitration. If this is something that you're interested in, I think there are two things that I would suggest. The first is kind of developing connections and getting to know people who do the practice at the various law firms that have a robust international arbitration practice. And now that's not just kind of like the big firms, like the largest firms that do the work, but also kind of the smaller and mid-sized firms that do a great job in international arbitration and have a presence. Because, again, I think especially for some of those smaller firms, they might not be as active kind of in the traditional job market spaces. And what might be most useful is, just being in touch with someone that you know there, such that when an opportunity arises, again, you're kind of at the forefront of that person's mind. And so maybe that would be the first tip that I would give. And then the second tip I would give is kind of connected to the second question, which is I would be also open about what markets you're willing to kind of practice in if you have that flexibility. The great thing about international arbitration as well is that you can do it almost any of kind of the major kind of cities where it's offered. Obviously, there's like central kind of areas. There's the New Yorks and DCs and the US, but Paris, Dubai, wherever, try to be open to the possibilities of what that looks like. I think, if you're willing to, I think, especially for folks who are just graduating from your LLM program, you do have, I think hopefully the opportunity and to be the desire to try working in new places. And so try to be open to that as well, because you'll find that a lot of these opportunities present themselves, maybe not necessarily in New York, but you can get your foot in the door with a great firm, in Paris that might give you those opportunities to kind of be more directed in where you go thereafter. And so, definitely be open to that. In terms of what was the second question, Todd? I just want to make sure.
No, that was it actually, just about like, concrete advice other than networking as to what students should do between now and the time they graduate, and if they should maybe broaden their search beyond the United States.
Yes. So the answer is yes. You definitely should. And I think, I think one of the things that maybe all of our stories have kind of hopefully kind of communicated is that the more open you are, the more willing you are to try new things. I mean, your next step after your LLM program is not your final step, right? It's not going to be the thing that you have to do for the rest of your career. There's so many different kind of decision points and ways you can kind of get to the place that you ultimately will want to be and will be content being in for the long term. And so, if it's, trying kind of, IP litigation in Chicago, even though that's something you've never thought that you wanted to do, just try it, be open to it, because, that can open many more doors, so I think, you're at a really exciting stage of your career that you have so many kind of options and different possibilities that you can kind of go down. So just really be open to kind of everything that's presented to you. And I think that's the kind of the surefire way to kind of go on the path to success and finding a job where you ultimately will be kind of content and excited to be doing the work.
Thank you, Charlene. Thank you for sharing your insights. I know you have to head out, so thank you so much for joining us today. But we still have with us Mo and Xenia, so thanks again. Um, so we do have, I do have a few other questions as well, but I will go over the chat because there are two questions, one for Xenia and one for Mo, which is a bit similar to what I was going to ask you later on, Mo. So for Xenia, we have Brahil Asghar. He says he's a fellow Canadian and is someone whose interests align with yours. He's currently pursuing his LLM at Boston University with focus on transactional and contract law. And he wanted to ask for advice regarding career opportunities in this field. Specifically, has not come across any opportunities to work with U.S. firms in Canada or vice versa. Maybe
Mhm.
could you share any insights or suggestions on how to pursue such opportunities?
Right. I mean, again, like beyond kind of what we've said before with the networking, I just wanted to echo what Charlene had said about, being open to location. So for example, in my own life, after I finished law school, my whole intention, because I'd grown up in Singapore, was to move back to Singapore. I'd become a Singapore lawyer, and that would be it. And then I received advice to consider Hong Kong. And the springboard from Hong Kong was that after Hong Kong, I eventually did get what I want to move back to Singapore. But in the interim, I had moved to London and I had opportunities where I was seconded with Deutsche Bank and BAML. And so you never know where these opportunities will take you. I think you shouldn't feel like you're limited in geography to, certain cities that you had your heart set on, which I know sounds kind of it bucks the trend, but I think people should keep an open mind to jurisdiction because sometimes the things that you didn't anticipate are the things that bring you the most opportunity. And so through kind of a series of events, it's now landed me where I am. So, the general, I think, advice is to keep networking and keep looking, reach out to the recruiters, reach out to the law firms, but also expand your search. Go to different cities that you have a genuine interest in, leverage your international mindset, leverage language skills. Like by the time you get to the interview, you can demonstrate your technical skills, but there's somewhat of an assumption there. So demonstrate your, you know, interest in international business or commercial awareness, that type of thing. So I would say kind of what I didn't expect, which ended up being of greatest benefit to me, was, kind of going beyond what I wanted to do, like the unexpected and starting in Hong Kong. And it brought me many more opportunities than what I even anticipated or expected for myself.
Mm, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Mo, this question also relates to the question that we had just in general. If you could maybe walk us through what's in these executive orders on immigration matters and how it's going to impact H-1Bs, OPTs, everyone's life who's here on an F1 or otherwise type of visa. So the student here is from the UK,
Yeah.
and he said, I think you read it, so they're all anxious by the new government. Are there more restrictions for international LLMs to get roles in the US? What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of information out there, a lot of anxiety and confusion, lack of clarity. So far, I haven't seen anything that will specifically, impact international students. I mean, we are having certain disruptions in, particular sectors, like the USAID related work. We have clients that hire lawyers in, entities that support development work across the world. So, that's been a big sort of, right now, there's a lot of challenges expected. But again, the time will tell, the dust hasn't settled yet. I mean, I think the only thing that directly impacts just kind of, but not not really singles out foreign students, but the last time we had a Trump administration, there were two rounds of travel bans. There were that were targeting certain countries. So um, we this time there is a move towards like there's one of the executive orders I believe has given the agency 60 days to recommend if there are particular countries of concern, and visa issuance to some country nationals might be subjected to greater scrutiny. But there's not any, so that remains to be seen. Um, the last time, as you all remember, there was successful litigation that blocked a lot of the most egregious travel restrictions. And so we will have a court battle. I do think that it might go into the court systems. But, the bright side is that, legal work is in demand. The economy is strong. I see just based on the demand for immigration on the business side, because I focus mostly on business. Now there's a lot of work in removal defense and humanitarian related immigration, huge demand. Those are growing areas of the bar. Um, and so there will be need for LLMs because a lot of the communities that are impacted by the executive orders are in the removal defense side are often folks that need lawyers who understand their language or have a sense of international affairs. So I think there's an uptick in demand for strong professionals in the immigration bar. So
I
yeah.
mean, with a strong interest, do you think? I mean, will there be? I mean, it's difficult sort of to foresee what exactly will happen, but do you think, let's say, I don't know, with the OPTs are going to take longer maybe to issue them? Do you think firms there will be appetite to do H-1B, especially when they keep hearing that there's maybe a restriction on immigration? I think that's sort of what the students are interested in. That's sort of also what I'm hearing at GW, just wanting to understand what's next, how will. Um,
Yeah, I
so
mean,
even though there's an interest maybe in hiring this particular population because of all the strength that they bring in, all these language skills, just sort of like realistically, what could they be up against?
I mean, I'm optimistic in the sense that hard work and expertise will be rewarded. I mean, yes, in the short term, there's some uncertainty about, yes, OPTs taking longer, H-1Bs being more restricted, but there's really no clear indication yet that there's been an adverse action taken. So as far as I'm concerned, all those programs are still in effect, and um, I believe that on the business and employment side of immigration, specifically for foreign national students and LLM graduates, I expect that because the schools are a big stakeholder in this, like the last time there was an attempt to restrict F1s, the academic community really kind of stood up to combat some of the administration's worst excesses. So, I mean, I mean, I feel confident that it's not going to be changing dramatically. So I would push on ahead. Now, obviously, it is like some of the um, suggestions about uh, getting experience in other parts of the world. That may not be a bad idea to keep all your options open and have a backup plan. Um, but if you look at the statistics on law firm hiring, I mean, I think there are certain industries that are disrupted by layoffs, and there we do have some clients who are, nervous about, they're putting on hold green card sponsorships or H-1B sponsorships. We have had some of that. Like we do see some clients just out of, the risk involved and the uncertainty of the future. They're pulling back on a little bit of like, sponsoring foreign nationals. So there will unfortunately be some of that. But
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I hear here a theme between all of you, like keeping options open, broaden your search, etc. And Angela also had a great advice in the chat to for any students if they're interested in working in a particular field or firm, maybe look through your LinkedIn network and see who works there and reach out to them. We do have a few more minutes before we conclude the session or the panel. I don't know if there are any other questions, from the students. There are a few questions that I was going to raise with you all, but I think you sort of, you've answered it really in the other questions. I mean, there were other questions about classes or activities in law school that were most valuable in your future career, and if being fluent in a foreign language was helpful and necessary in obtaining your positions. So maybe Sanya, we start with you. If there were any particular class that you took back in the day that really made a
Well,
difference, in
well,
your career.
let me think back. That's many moons ago. I would say the class which is perfect for this chat, this panel, is I took an international law class, which I absolutely loved. And I think it did help me in that it just gave me a better outlook, a more international outlook, a broader outlook. Whether it impacts me specifically, probably not. But I think that sort of view and that understanding has guided me to a certain extent. Um, so I would say that class has helped me. And maybe it's just the one I like the most. If I could just I wanted to raise one more point that I forgot earlier about being open to
Sure.
geography, is that, I've had a number of friends now who are back in New York as lawyers and some at very prestigious US firms who are US lawyers who actually started their career overseas. Some of them started in London, some of them started in other cities. And after, however much time that they wanted to be out there, they felt at that point they wanted to move back to the US or move to the US, and they were able to do it very successfully. And at that point, they leveraged their networks because they had built them over the years of working. And, at that point, they had also reached out to recruiters. So again, I think have an open mind towards geography. You can have a really great career overseas in a city you never anticipated, and then, come full circle back to New York.
Oh,
Yeah,
Mo,
I can. Yeah, can
yeah, are you still,
I,
yeah.
yes, can you hear me? Okay. Um, yeah, I think I agree. Totally. I think with Xenia, she makes great points there. If I had to pick a handful of things, I mean, um, the one activity that I have, greatly um, that's greatly assisted me has been active involvement in the ABA section of international law. Now, right at the outset of my career, I mean, being in DC was amazing. Being at GW was amazing. Like a lot of great faculty and, a lot of my fellow alumni and professors stayed relevant in different, areas. Some of these professors went on to be senior level executive branch folks, or some of my colleagues are at the agencies. Like, so I do a lot of work with the USCIS. So having friends and colleagues that are experts in the area. So the ABA international section, when I had a strong interest in international, and by regularly participating in committee activities. So just join any committee that is of interest. They have like their geographic committees, their practice area committees, and they are very welcoming to volunteers to write articles, to organize webinars like this one. And, it has rewarded me so much in the last many years that whether when I transitioned to a different area of law, there were immigration lawyers in the section that stepped up to guide me and counsel me, that were source of expertise, then helping me to build a network to get client referrals. So some activity like this, I mean, is very important. And you constantly make new friends and allow people to get to know you. Like somebody, one of my bosses once told me that, hey, Mo, you're not going to get any work if nobody knows what you do. And the way you do it, you think of everybody as a potential client or a potential referrer of a client. So if you're targeting private practice, um, a bar association activity that you enjoy, and surrounding yourself with people who you can get along with um, and enjoy your time with, and also, talk about work-related things that are helpful. Um, so I think, I would strongly recommend the sooner you can to join many of these bar associations will have a new lawyer or a young lawyer or a LLM, chapter. And I definitely think that that's very valuable, and you'll meet people who will, because I think, Xenia will agree that we are here because others before us helped us out, right? So generally in our profession, we want to pay it forward. I would not be here sitting in front of you talking on this panel if many before me had not helped me. And we all enjoy helping serious professionals to advance in
Mhm.
their career.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Thank you. So definitely, all of you, if you're not a member of the ABA section of international law, please do join and volunteer. You'll, as Mo said, we get amazing mentors. So we do have, I think, maybe one more minute, and there's quite a long three questions here. But I think we have a student who has a background in contracts, and they want to see if they worked in a multinational corporation doing that. They want to know if it's worth pursuing a career in contracts, or if not, if they should take the bar and explore other opportunities. Um, I mean, I think I would say as a career counselor, you should always leverage what expertise you bring in, and what you've heard from the other panelists. Keep an open mind, meaning, you may want to take. I mean, it depends really on your personal goals and whether it makes sense for you to take the bar and be licensed here in the US, which will open up other opportunities. I don't know if Xenia Wong have additional thoughts on what I just said.
Yeah, I agree with what you've said. I mean, I think it's always good to leverage your strengths. And again, like whether you take the New York bar, because it is quite a marathon in the run up to actually sitting for the exam. Um, if that's the decision and a choice that you want to make for yourself. But I wouldn't necessarily limit myself to just one option in terms of what I want to do. I mean, there are a lot of skills that are portable and mobile, like that you can, in terms of organization, thinking skills, critical thinking, and all of that, that you can apply to many other areas. And so
Hmm.
I wouldn't ever limit yourself. This is just the beginning. And I think there are a lot of fantastic opportunities out there. So don't cut yourself off or short before you even have started.
Thank you. All right, Mo, maybe there's this. Maybe 1 second, if you could tell that student if an employer will sponsor them after OPT, and that's $1 million question.
Well, yes, I mean, OPTs are a good chance to um, prove yourself. So it's nice to have that 1 year work authorization, and then the idea is to demonstrate to an employer that you are the best candidate for the job. And most employers, I mean, sometimes employers that have not previously participated in a immigration sponsorship, they just simply don't have the awareness. So what I would suggest is that you learn up what are the specific requirements and then educate the employer. So that's what I help a lot of, because a lot of times there's misperceptions. Employers overthink it, like they think it's more complicated than it actually is. So, and that's what I had to do with my own employer. I was the first H-1B that law firm had ever done. They didn't know what an H-1B was. And as we moved through the different steps, I had to take a lot of role on in terms of educating the management about, hey, here's what's involved in it. It's really not that scary. It's doable. So you find that don't be frustrated if you initially try and the employer doesn't really know what sponsorship is. So don't assume
Hmm.
that just because they're asking questions means that they are maybe negatively inclined. It's just often ignorance. Larger firms, larger employers, they tend to have lawyers that are immigration lawyers that they know, the HR people know about the visa types, and they might just be more informed. But then you may also have more competition applying at the larger employers. So if you're dealing with a small to medium-sized employer, it may be that they've never done an H, so you have to equip yourself with the right knowledge to inform them about what it is that they're doing. And the H-1B lottery is coming up, so March the 7th is
Hmm.
the due date to register in the lottery, so it's timely. So go to the
Great.
HR and thank you.
Thank you, Mo. Well, thank you so much, all of you. Thank you again to Angela at the ABA, Clara at NYU, and to our panelists, all of our panelists. This concludes the session. You will all be receiving the recording. Thanks again so much for sharing your insights. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Take,
Thank
I
you.
enjoyed it. Thanks a
of
lot. Have a
course.
great day.
Bye.
Thanks. Take
Bye.
care. Bye bye.